This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. For more information, visit online at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy. Build his future.
Joining us now, this is a special edition, is Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, great to have you with us today, sir.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me.
I want to get right to your jaunt down here to Virginia Beach. You're coming to Virginia Beach, Southeast Virginia on Monday on behalf of Republican gubernatorial candidate Ken Cuccinelli. And that'll be, I want to tell everybody, that'll be from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. on Monday, October 28th at the Filipino Cultural Center at Virginia Beach. And you can get more information on that. Just go to Cuccinelli.com. Senator, what has inspired you to get involved in this gubernatorial race?
You know, I was really proud of Ken Cuccinelli for being the first one to challenge the constitutionality of Obamacare. I still think he was right. I think the lower courts were right. I think it is unconstitutional. And I think really you cannot in a free society, or you should not in a free society, be forced to buy a commercial product from a private company. I just don't know how we think that's consistent with our constitutional republic. But I'm proud of Ken for one to try that case in court as the Attorney General.
Right.
Also proud of him for being somebody who stands up for a lot of kids who live in poverty and have to go to crummy schools. Mm-hmm. I think his advocacy for school choice and for improving schools for all kids is something that's very commendable. I like his idea of justice. There was a man accused of a crime in jail for over 20 years in Virginia, and when he found out that he was innocent, he worked hard to get him free. And I think that's more of the kind of servants we need in government.
Now, Senator, right now in most of the public surveys, Ken Cuccinelli is trailing the Democratic nominee for governor, Terry McAuliffe. Now, I think you can talk from experience. You were in a race that you basically were the underdog. You trailed the whole time. Then were able to come back in the end, win it all. What is your advice right now to the Attorney General of Virginia in this race?
You know, if you believe in a constitutional republic, your listeners who like Ken Cuccinelli need to make sure they get all their friends and family out. Then they call 100 more friends. It is about getting people to the polls. Turnout's not always so high in Virginia gubernatorial races, so I think turning out your vote is important. But really deciding whether or not you're worried about our country. I frankly am worried about piling on so much debt. I'm worried about so much intrusion into our lives that all of the choices are lost. The biggest thing that's going to come out of Obamacare really is that we're losing our ability to make decisions over what we want. The government's telling us what we have to buy and what it can include. And I think that lack of freedom of choice is slipping away from us if we don't stand up and make a stand. And I think Ken will make a stand for trying to limit the size and scope of government in Virginia. And I think he's really, frankly, one of the leaders that we need in our country.
The aftermath of the government shutdown, the compromise, or some call it capitulation on raising the debt ceiling, many people are looking at what happened as just a Republican brand debacle. You know, having now stepped back, Senator, and looked at this whole thing, where do you think it went wrong?
Well, I would say from the very beginning it's a conundrum. And a conundrum is a problem that has really no easy answer. We have a $17 trillion debt. We're borrowing over $1 million a minute. That's a problem. And if we do nothing and just let the president raise the debt ceiling, let him keep spending at the same rate, I don't think that's a viable alternative. Then again, going through deadlines isn't a great thing either, and the public, I think, is somewhat justified in being dissatisfied at the dysfunction of government. But they have to realize why we lurch from deadline to deadline. Mm-hmm. The reason we lurch from deadline to deadline is the appropriation bills, the 12 individual spending bills that we're supposed to do, we haven't done in years. Mm-hmm. And this is absolutely and entirely Harry Reid's fault. He doesn't even put them up for a vote. If he had put each of the 12 appropriation bills up in a timely fashion for a vote, mm-hmm. there would be no continuing resolution. There would be no shutdown of government possible. Mm-hmm. But frankly, I think the Democrats clapped their hands in glee and rubbed them together and said, we love the shutdown. Republicans tried 13 times to open the government, and the Democrats objected every time.
Well, you know, Senator, from the inception, from the statements you made, you were not particularly enthusiastic about the strategy that actually went down. So had you been in charge, what type of an approach to that would you have preferred?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to get the president to the negotiating table. And I really think that public relations, had there not been a shutdown, really go against the president on this, because him not negotiating, him not compromising, and him saying his way or the highway, particularly on the debt ceiling, is incredibly unpopular. If you ask the American people, should we raise the debt ceiling with no conditions, with no spending restraint or no trade-offs? I think the vast majority, in polls have showed this, 70, 80% of people do not want us to keep borrowing unabated, borrowing without any rules or restrictions. So if we hadn't gotten the shutdown in there and we were just debating over whether or not the debt ceiling should have attachment to it or conditions, won that debate, and we're going to have that debate again. See, this is going to happen again in January, and some people are already lamenting that.
Right.
But in a robust republic, there will be debate, and there will be disagreement, but we cannot just lay down as Republicans and say to the president, hey, raise the debt ceiling as much as you want, we don't care, because I think it's bad for the country.
As you go forward now in this debate, obviously in almost every survey out there, the Republican brand took a real hit in Congress. So how do you maneuver your way out of the negative surveys and still be able to convince Americans that something has to be done radically in order to change the trajectory of the debt that we're on?
You know, I think as far as the Republican brand, what we have to do is tell our story better. We have to articulate the message that we are the party of opportunity, that when the president talks about the middle class, he really wants you to be in an underclass. He wants to give you something, but with one hand he gives you something, the other hand he keeps you down.
Senator, we're almost out of time. Here's my final question. I want to move to foreign policy a minute. There's a number now of European governments that are just showing something between frustration and outrage over the behavior of the NSA in tapping into their email, tapping their phones, basically surveilling an ally in friendly summits that we have. I think it's not going to go away. The president has not really addressed it. No one seems to be accountable for the decision to tap the phones and hack into emails of the French diplomatic group. No one's taking ownership of it. I mean, isn't this a black eye for us? And how do we look our allies in the eye and say, trust us now?
I think we need to target our surveillance both domestically and abroad towards individuals that might harm the country. There needs to be a standard. Within the country, I think it needs to be probable cause. So I think you have to have in the country a warrant specific to a person. And there's a story out this morning saying that in a 30-day period, the NSA collected 124 billion phone records, and that's something that we need to really stop. We should not have that.
Senator, final question. What would you say to the Saudis who just rejected a seat on the UN Security Council, and basically one of their reasons is that they don't feel that the United States has stood with them in the Syrian situation? If you were president and you picked up the phone and had a chat with the Saudi royalty, what would be your message to them, sir?
I would say to the Saudis that a lot of their money has funded hatred of America for a couple of decades. Most of the hijackers on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia, and I really expect them to step up and do a better job at not funding radical jihad, not funding radicalism within Islam that hates America. And frankly, I think we need to be more independent of the Middle East on oil anyway. If we were drilling more here, we'd be sending less money over to countries that are fostering hatred of us.
Okay, Senator, that's going to be the final word. We're out of time. We want to thank you for joining us today on the John Fredericks Show, WHKT AM 1650. Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you Monday, October 28th at 12:30 p.m. at the Filipino Cultural Center in Virginia Beach. For Ken Cuccinelli, this has been a special edition of the John Fredericks Show.